We continue our look at the LA Kings defense with a focus on the team's projected third pairing, and we'll have another edition of Name That King that's coming up on today's episode of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. On today's episode of Locked On LA Kings, we talk about the Kings' defense, focusing on the projected third pairing of Sean Walker and Sean Durzi. Plus, we'll test your LA Kings player knowledge and ask the question, do the Kings need to make a change? What does that mean? We'll find out. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host for Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for almost 30 years. The past 20 plus years, I've worked at the Fox Sports Radio Network, where I am a co-host, sidekick, reporter, and NHL insider. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It is a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 16 years. And of course, most importantly to you, I'm a lifelong LA Kings fan. We continue our look at the LA Kings defensive core for the upcoming season. On Tuesday's show, we looked at the Kings' top pairing with veteran Drew Doughty and up-and-coming defenseman Mikey Anderson. Wednesday, we talked about the team's projected second pairing, veteran Matt Roy and former first-round pick Tobias Bjornfoot. And today, we look at the Kings' projected third pairing of Sean Walker and Sean Durzi. We'll start with Sean Walker, who is 27 years old. He is signed for the next 2 years, making $2.65 million per season. Walker was undrafted after a 4-year career at Bowling Green University. He joined the Ontario Reign for the 2017-18 season. In 2 years with the Reign, Walker played in 86 games with 13 goals and 32 assists for 45 points. In 4 seasons with the Kings, he has played in 162 games with 13 goals and 41 assists for 54 points. Now, he's really only played 2 full seasons as a member of the LA Kings because of some injury issues, unfortunately. Last season, Walker only played 6 games, and he had just 2 assists before being lost for the season after suffering a torn ACL and MCL in his right knee. So it's pretty silly to try and evaluate Walker's season a year ago with only 6 games played. Now, if he can return from a major knee injury, and GM Rob Blake has said that Walker has been cleared and ready to participate in the upcoming training camp, Sean Walker is best known for his versatility, not just having a solid two-way game, but he can play both the left and the right side defensively. And right now he's slated to play on the left side, which is, even though he is a right-handed shot, he's slated to play on the left side, which he has done in the past. And of course, the Kings have so much talent, a bit of a logjam on the right side. They need somebody to shift over and play the left side. He's had experience at that, so that makes him a little bit more valuable as well. Walker and Drew Doughty being out of the lineup for a lot of the season last year obviously was impactful on the Kings as far as their defense providing some offense. As a matter of fact, only one team in the NHL last season had fewer goals from their defensive core than the LA Kings. That was the Detroit Red Wings. They had a total of 20 goals from their blue line. The Kings had 21. A healthy Sean Walker should help that out a bit. He is not a dynamic scorer, but he is creative with the puck, creative enough. And he might be a little bit less reliable on defense. So he's kind of a little bit of a step down from a guy like Matt Roy, who doesn't provide quite as much offense, but is very solid defensively. Sean Walker gives you a little bit more offense, but not quite as good defensively, but a good skater. Pretty good as far as his awareness on the ice, knows when to jump up into play, knows when to help out the offense and keep the puck in the zone, knows when to take chances, when not to take chances. So I think for Sean Walker, he's one of those guys who's had the injury issues of late. So just get him healthy and, playing for a full season. And that alone should help out the Kings defensively. Now, the team was solid enough all around defensively last year, But we know that, as I mentioned, not a lot of offense from the blue line. Walker is a guy who can provide more of that. So hopefully, if he's healthy, that can, in and of itself, help out the Kings' defensive core, help out the offense a little bit more, because the Kings have been a offensively challenged team over the past 2 seasons. So again, just for Sean Walker's career as well, would be great to see him, and he's signed up for the next couple of years. Just get healthy, and I think he's got the ability to be a very solid third pairing defenseman back there. So as we have kind of seen, and again, this is all subject to change. I'm not Todd McClellan. I'm not filling out the lineup card, so I can't say with 100% certainty that these are the pairings we're going to see for the majority of the season. Obviously, injuries play a concern or an issue in that. But I do think this is the pairings that we're going to see going forward. Like I said, Drew Doughty and Mikey Anderson, that's pretty much a lock, I think, for the number 1 pairing. I think it is very likely we will see Matt Roy and Tobias Bjornfoot on the second pairing. And then the third pairing, I'm pretty sure that we're going to see Sean Walker and Sean Durzi, who we'll talk about now. One of the big pleasant surprises from a season ago, 23 years old. He is still unsigned, so we are waiting for that business to be taken care of before we officially have him locked in. But we certainly penciled in, I think, to be on that third pairing. He was tendered a qualifying offer this offseason, but that hasn't been ironed out just yet. Durzi, though, acquired, if you don't remember, by the Kings from the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Jake Muzzin deal. Durzi, along with forward Carl Grundstrom, and a first-round pick that would turn into defenseman Tobias Bjornfoot, coming over for Jake Muzzin. So very good return in that deal, in my opinion, at this point, for GM Rob Blake in the Jake Muzzin deal. As for Durzi, he was originally a second-round pick of Toronto, 52nd overall in the 2018 draft. He played parts of 3 seasons with the Ontario Reign, appearing in 91 games in the AHL with 11 goals and 39 assists for 50 points. Last season, his first full season in the NHL, he played 64 games with 3 goals and 24 assists for 27 points. And those 27 points were good enough to tie him with Drew Doughty for 10th all-time as far as most points scored by a Kings defenseman in their rookie season. Now, did Sean Durzi make some rookie mistakes last season? There's no question about it. Did he also, though, show a lot of potential and a lot of upside? I think he absolutely did. One thing I loved about Sean Durzi, and I will admit I'm a bit of a fan of Sean Durzi because of this. And this is no knock on any of the other defensemen. When Drew Doughty left the lineup, the creativity from the blue line pretty much dried up. There was not a lot of creativity there. There was no real defenseman to be kind of respected in a way as far as their offensive game. Defensively, that's another story, but we're just talking about offense at this point. And when Sean Durzi was forced into the lineup, I thought he showed a lot of creativity. I thought he showed almost a healthy arrogance. He didn't look afraid. Now, when you're a young player and you're trying to learn at the NHL level, that can be a point of strength, but it could also be a point of weakness. And I think we saw a mixed bag with that with Sean Durzi. There were times, and this is a guy who was running the team's, as a rookie, running the team's second power play unit. He's got a good shot. He knows how to skate with the puck to find shooting lanes and get the puck on net for rebounds for his teammates, for the forwards. He will make moves in traffic. He's a little bit daring back there. And I think once he gets more experience and he kind of harnesses his game a little bit without letting go of that side of his game, I think he could be a real asset offensively for the LA Kings. I love that he didn't have fear. Now, sometimes that did get him in trouble. Sometimes he would make mistakes when, in opportune times. But again, I think that comes with experience. You can't teach swagger, which I think he has, but you can teach him when to be aggressive and when to play it safe. And that comes with experience. He needs to understand, situationally the game more. And that could depend on a number of things. What is the score? What period are we in? How's your goalie playing? What opponents are on the ice against you? All those things you have to be aware of, and that becomes second nature more and more with experience. So I think Sean Durzi got his career started probably a little bit earlier than we all expected it would, but I think it kind of certainly, I got expected, gave him a lot of confidence going forward into this season. where now he's probably expecting to make the team, expecting, like I said, to be on that third pairing and really able to take the experience he had from last year, take that into training camp, obviously get a little bit more continuity with his defensive partner. If that ends up, on the third pairing, sometimes that can fluctuate. And we're going to talk more on tomorrow's show about the other defensemen that are in the system that are providing depth that could be in and out of the lineup as well. But the Seans on the third pairing, I think, is pretty solid. If we can just get Sean Walker healthy for a full season, now you've got a guy like Walker and Durzi who gets a lot of experience from his rookie year. And I think those two guys, again, Todd McClellan and the Kings are always going to stress defense first for their defensemen. But we know the Kings can be at times offensively challenged. We talked about how, second worst in the NHL as far as goals from their blue line. Just a little bit of a bump, right? A little bit of a bump from the blue line with guys staying more healthy, with guys getting more experience should help those numbers. And also, we'll talk more about this in a later episode, but then on the power play as well. It all should have a kind of a trickle-down effect for the Kings offensively to be better next season while still being the solid defensive team that they're going to, rely on, that they're going to be, that's going to be their biggest strength. But obviously the name of the game is not only keeping the puck out of your net, but putting it in the other team's net as well. So we'll see if this turns out to be the third pairing, but I think the Seans, Walker, and Durzi would be a very solid third pairing defensively for the LA Kings come next season. Now, if you want to place a wager on the LA Kings to win the Stanley Cup next season, BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, combat sports, esports, and even golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So it is time for another exciting edition, at least I hope, of Name That King, weekly feature during the offseason for sure here on Locked On LA Kings. And so far I've had some pretty good feedback on this segment. Some people have liked it, so hopefully that will continue. So if this is your first time hearing this, I give out clues on a former LA Kings player, and we'll see if you can figure out who it is before I get to the end. If you don't know who this player is, well, hopefully you will learn more about the LA Kings. Your knowledge of Kings players will grow from this. So let's get into this edition of Name That King. This King was born in Anjou, Quebec in 1971. He would be drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second round, 31st overall pick of the 1990 NHL draft. He'd go on to play parts of 7 seasons in Toronto before being traded to the New York Islanders in 1998 for defenseman Brian Berard. He would only play 33 games on Long Island before being shipped off to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for goalie Kevin Weeks and forwards Dave Scatchard and Bill McCult. After just 69 games in Vancouver, it appeared that this player's career may be about over. He was traded to the LA Kings for nothing, basically, future considerations. So the Kings were willing to take a chance on this guy to see if he had anything left. And lo and behold, he did have something left in the tank. He played a prominent role for the Kings in parts of 3 seasons and had a very key role in the Kings winning their first playoff series in 8 years when they upset the Detroit Red Wings in the 2000-2001 Western Conference Finals in 6 games. He'd go on to play one more season in the AHL. That was in 2003 with the Boston Bruins before officially retiring. He ranks 7th all-time in wins in Kings history by a goaltender with 61. The biggest game of his career, ironically, came against the Kings while he was playing for the Maple Leafs. That was Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals in 1993, when Wayne Gretzky scored a hat trick on him to advance the Kings into the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history. His nickname was the Cat. Can you name that King? The name is Felix Potvin. Felix Potvin. Hopefully that brings back some memories, as Felix the Cat had a decent short career with the LA Kings, but played some decent hockey for the Kings there in the 2000s. Hey, just a reminder that Locked On NHL has you covered for all of your league-wide NHL talk with a rotating cast of local hosts from the Locked On NHL channel, breaking down the biggest stories in hockey 5 days a week. Subscribe for free on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. So it is the offseason, and news sometimes comes sporadically. And I actually was not doing this as any kind of a filler segment. I really had this question recently, and you guys are getting to know me a little bit. And I am a big hockey jersey collector. I've got a bunch of different Kings jerseys. I'm going to wear one on Friday and have kind of a Jersey Friday thing going here on the podcast. But I was looking at my my collection. I have them all in my garage because there's honestly not room in my closet for all the jerseys that I have. And it did strike me that there are a lot of jerseys there with not a lot of color. And I really do wonder, is it time for the Kings to have a uniform change? Now, teams usually only do this when they're not playing well, and they want to do something to drum up interest amongst the fans, and they want to get a little more cash in their pockets. And the Kings certainly are not in that category, but they are kind of moving into a new era. We saw Dustin Brown retire this past season. Jonathan Quick may be playing his final season with the LA Kings, and maybe even his final season in the NHL if he decides to go the route that Dustin Brown did. Ajay Kopitar still has a few more years, but I mean, he's certainly closer to the end than the beginning. And Drew Doughty, a little bit more probably for Drew, but at some point, a lot of these younger guys are going to need to step forward and become the stars of tomorrow, like Adrian Kempe did this past season for the LA Kings. So maybe with that in mind, maybe that's part of ushering in a bit of a new era. And really, my biggest complaint, I guess, is that there's just no color in the Kings uniforms. They are literally black and white. I mean, you've got those video series that the LA Kings put out called Black and White that are really well done. But I'm a big fan of the color purple. I'm wearing my Purple Kings old school hat today. I'd like, even if we keep the style and the design exactly the same, maybe get some purple in there instead of having the black jerseys. Maybe a dark purple or something along those lines. Like I said, I don't know. Maybe purple isn't a popular color. I know not a ton of teams in pro sports have purple. You've got the Sacramento Kings or some purple. The Lakers obviously have some purple. I guess the most purple team in professional sports would be the Minnesota Vikings in the NFL. But purple is an untapped color in the NHL. I think the Coyotes have like a third jersey which has some purple in it. But it would make the Kings stand out and be a little different. And just to have some color, to me, it's appealing to me. And look, I'm black and white are colors. And if you go in my closet, you will see probably 80% of my T-shirts, hoodies, and baseball caps are black. So I'm not opposed to, I like black. But for a while, it has kind of bugged me that the Kings uniforms are so boring. We have seen some alternate jerseys recently that I think Kings fans really enjoyed. I know that reverse retro jersey that came out. I loved that jersey. It was kind of a throwback to a couple of different eras. It was and by the way, I know some of you would be like, oh, it's not purple, it's Forum Blue, which is actually the actual name of that color, dubbed by former owner Jack Kent Cooke back in the day, who owned the Lakers and was the original owner of the LA Kings. But whatever, purple, Forum Blue, whatever you want to call it. Those reverse retros where they had the gold and the purple, and then the logo was actually that silver Chevy kind of logo, I think they unofficially called it, when Gretzky and Robitaille were playing in their heyday, when they were coming up and when the Kings made their first trip to the Stanley Cup final, and I kind of talked about earlier with Felix Potvin. But that was a nice little kind of homage to a few different eras. I love those jerseys. I don't know why they were so hard to find. I only was able to get a replica reverse retro. The authentics were so rare. You couldn't find them. And it seemed like Kings fans really liked them. I think hockey fans in general really liked those jerseys. And why they were so difficult to track down is a total mystery, because you'd think, look, hey, the NHL actually made something everyone likes. Let's make it really hard for people to find it and buy it. But those jerseys were great. I know the Kings had an alternate jersey last year where they kind of implemented more silver into things. They had that bright silver logo. I know they've got the chrome helmets as well. It's certainly unique. I'll give them that. It does make things pop a little bit more. But look, I understand too that there's going to be a sentimental attachment to those very bland, basic black and white uniforms because the Kings won their 2 Stanley Cups wearing those uniforms. So those will always be special uniforms just because of that. But if we can back away from the emotional attachment of that, I think most people would agree that the Kings' basic uniforms are just that. They're super basic. Now, there is something to be said for less is more. I know, I do a radio show with a Penn State legendary football player, LeVar Arrington, and a lot of people like the Penn State football uniforms. They are as basic as can be. It's a white helmet, no logo on it, a dark blue jersey, doesn't say Penn State across the front, doesn't say Nittany Lions, their nickname, nothing, just a dark blue jersey and white pants. And that's it. And some people love that. Some people think, like I said, they like less is more. I'm not as big a fan of that necessarily, but it is a legitimate thought that I had. I'm promising you, I'm not just doing this as a filler segment. It is something I thought about, and I'm pretty sure it's something that most Kings fans have an opinion on. Now, there certainly have been a number of different iterations of the Kings uniforms over the years. We are not the Blackhawks. We're not the Red Wings. We're not the Maple Leafs. We've tried a few different things over the years to, like I said, when you're not good, you do some things to generate interest. And there have been some lean years for the Kings, as you guys know, if you've been longtime Kings fans. But since we haven't been afraid of change, maybe time for a little change as well. Like I said, I'm not even suggesting drastic change. Just like I said, if we could get some dark purple uniforms or something like that, I don't know. I think it would be a much better look for the LA Kings. And I've always been a huge fan of the crown logo just in the middle. You've got the classic logos in the NHL, the flying P for Philadelphia, the Black Hawk, Native American head logo. We've had a few different things, but I think the Kings always should have in the middle of their crest a crown. And I'd love to see them go back to that. But anyway, that's just me. That's just my ideas. Maybe I'm completely wrong. If you want to chime in on this, more than welcome to hear your feedback. The email address I'll give out in just a second. Matter of fact, I'll give it out right now because we're coming to the end of today's show. If you want to chime in on that particular issue or anything I've talked about in any of the previous podcasts, or if you just want to give your opinion on a player or anything, whatever it is, if it's Kings related, I'm more than willing to read it, respond to it, and maybe use it on a future show. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. Again, we are planning a weekly email segment with listener feedback in the offseason and during the season as well. I'd love for you guys to be a part of this show. We are going to read some emails coming up on tomorrow's show. So again, that email address, lockedoneddie@gmail.com. Coming up on Friday's show, which I just mentioned, we're going to update you on any Kings news, of course, that happens. We're still waiting for those contracts to come down for Mikey Anderson and Sean Durzi. We'll also, talk about the depth that the Kings have defensively as we kind of wrap up a look at the defense and some of the players that could be in making it into the lineup. Some of the younger guys, a guy like Brant Clark, we'll definitely talk about coming up. And also, like I said, the emails. We're going to read some of your emails, answer some of your questions, read some of your comments coming up on Friday's show. To keep up to date with this show and what's going on with the LA Kings, I also would ask you to please follow us on Twitter. We are at LockedOnLAKings, at LockedOnLAKings. And again, we told you the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com. I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Locked On LA Kings, your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast of all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. That's Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Again, thank you so much for listening and for watching on YouTube. My name is Eddie Garcia. Thanks for being a part of Locked On LA Kings. And as always, we close out the show by saying, go Kings, go.